Welcome to this session at Medical Sciences Made Easy by Naphtali Muhumuza. We are always at your service, and we always encourage you to subscribe to this channel. When you subscribe, you are able to be updated whenever we release a video. And today we want to discuss about histology of the GIT. And histology of the GIT, majorly, we start it from the mouth up to the anal canal. And in the mouth, if we talk about the mouth, in the mouth, the epithelial lining, it is lined by non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified squamous epithelium. So this is the epithelial lining. And this epithelial lining, we see it in the mouth. So we see it in the mouth, in the pharynx. We see it in the upper third of the esophagus. And another part we see it is the anal canal. So mouth, the pharynx, the upper third of the esophagus, and the anal canal, they are lined by the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. And its role is protective role. Whenever you take hot food, you see in the mouth, in the pharynx, and the upper third of the esophagus, it is still hot. It might cause abrasion. So they have stratified non-keratinized squamous for protection or for quick multiplication. That is why we find the lining. And even still, there is harsh conditions in the anus. That's why we find it there. So in these four parts, that is the mouth, the pharynx, the upper third of the esophagus, and the anal canal, we are seeing non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. And this epithelial lining is always found on the mucosa, as we are going to look at T after looking at the layers. Then the remaining part, that is the lower part of the esophagus, the stomach. We see the small intestine, small and large intestines. For these ones, the epithelial lining, they are lined with what we call simple columnar epithelium. This is simple columnar. Simple columnar epithelium. And this epithelium in these places, it serves major two roles. That is secretory role, and it can also do the work of absorptive. It can also do absorption. So these are the major two importance of simple columnar epithelium, whereby it has the secretory cells that secrete GIT secretions like the gastric juice, the pancreatic juice. We see they are produced by these epithelia, whereas it can also do the work of absorption. Then we have seen this non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. For it, its major role is protection. It does a protective role. That is what we can talk about the epithelial lining. And as we normally talk about that, the GIT has 4 layers. It has 4 layers, whereby these 4 layers include the first one is the mucosa, and this mucosa is followed by the submucosa. Then it is followed by the muscularis. And then it ends with the serosa. You can call it serosa stroke adventitia, as we shall see. So these are the major 4 layers of the GIT. but some vary according to the site, as you're going to see. But these ones cut across right away from the oesophagus to the anal canal. We see these 4 layers, except with the exception of the mouth and the pharynx. The esophagus, the stomach, we see the small intestine and large intestine having these 4 layers, whereby the first one is the mucosa. And the mucosa is what we are showing in this diagram from here up to here. This is the mucosa layer. And this mucosa layer is divided into 3, whereby we have the epithelium, or what we call we have the epithelial lining, we have the lamina propria, we have the lamina propria, and we have the Muscularis mucosa. Muscularis mucosa. So these are the 3 layers of the mucosa. This mucosa has 3 layers. It has the epithelial lining, then it has this inside the part is what we call the lamina propria, and it ends up with this lining, which is called the muscularis mucosa. It is a small layer. And this small layer, whereby in the inner one it is of course covered by the epithelium lining, where we are saying in the oesophagus it is non-keratinized stratified squamous. Then we are saying in this one is in the oesophagus, the upper third. Then the lower third up to the large intestine, as we have seen it up here, it is by simple squamous epithelium, simple squamous. Then we see the lamina propria. For it is supplied with the areola connective tissue. It is supplied by the vessels. We see the areola connective tissue, we see the lymphatic vessels being supplied within the lamina propria. Then the muscularis mucosa is made up of smooth muscles, as we shall see, we'll go on to see. But for all, muscularis mucosa is made up of smooth muscles which enable peristaltic movements of the food. So this is the mucosa, which is the first layer. That is what we can talk about the mucosa. Then from there we can look at the submucosa. And this submucosa, still we see it ranging from the oesophagus then to the anal canal. That is how we see it. And this submucosa is made up of the still areola connective tissue. Areola connective tissue, we see it being supplied by the blood vessels. We see it being supplied by nerves. And it is in this submucosa that we find our nerve plexus, which we know as Messina's plexus, or you can call it submucosa plexus. This is submucosa. So in the submucosa, majorly in the stomach and the large and the small intestines, we find there a plexus. What does the plexus mean? It is a network of nerves where they are meeting. And these nerves, we see them within the submucosa. And when we find them in the submucosa, we call them Messina's plexus, or what you can call submucosa plexus. And we shall see they are all under enteric nervous system, whereby they are supplied by the autonomic nervous system. So this is what we can find into the submucosa, the nerves whereby we are even finding there the Messina's plexus. Then from the submucosa, which is number 2, we go to number 3, which is muscularis layer. Number 3, which is muscularis layer. And this muscularis layer is made up of, let me first remove this serosa. This muscularis layer is made up of, in the oesophagus, if it is in the oesophagus, we find there two layers. That is the outer longitudinal and the inner circular muscles. And these ones, they are very within, if I can divide the oesophagus here, this is the oesophagus. We see this oesophagus, if we divide it into three, we see the first part and the second, the muscularis layer is skeletal. It's made up of skeletal muscles. And that's why we see you can control them voluntarily. It has skeletal muscles, whereas the last third is made up of smooth. This first one is purely skeletal. The second one has both skeletal and smooth muscles. Then the last part of the oesophagus has only smooth muscles, made up of outer longitudinal and inner circular. That is the muscularis layer of the oesophagus. And when we go to the stomach, if we go to the stomach, we shall see in the stomach, this muscularis layer is made up of three layers. We have seen oesophagus has two, outer longitudinal and inner circular. But the stomach has three, whereby it has the inner oblique, it has the middle circular, and it has the outer longitudinal. So for it, its muscularis layer is made up of three layers, and it is the only one which has three layers, the muscularis layer. It has the inner oblique, the inner circular, and outer longitudinal. And why does it have oblique? This one enables churning action. We see in the stomach there is what we call peristaltic waves or mixing waves. And these mixing waves, which mixes the gastric juice together with the food bolus, those are the churning actions created by these three layers of muscularis. That is the oblique, the circular, and the longitudinal. And these guys, we are saying they are responsible for bringing about churning action. Churning action, what we call mixing waves, that mixes the food very well with the gastric juice. So that is, and these muscles, they are made up of smooth. It is made up of, as we have seen, this oesophagus for it has skeletal, another one has skeletal and smooth, another one, then the last one has smooth muscles only. Here we see also stomach having smooth muscles, meaning the actions in the stomach are involuntary. We cannot control them because they are made up of smooth muscles, which is oblique. We have the oblique, we have the outer longitudinal, and the middle circular. So that is the muscularis of the stomach. Then when we go to the small intestines, we are going to see it has also only two layers. That is the outer longitudinal and the inner circular. And all of them are also made up of smooth muscles. And the same thing with large intestines, they also have outer longitudinal and inner circular, all made up of smooth muscles. And we find there is another plexus, which I'm seeing on my diagram here, called the Myenteric plexus. And this Myenteric plexus is always found between the outer longitudinal and the inner circular. And this plexus, which we are calling Myenteric, we can also call it the Aubach plexus, or the plexus of Aubach. This is the Myenteric. You can call it Myenteric, or you can call it Aubach. Aubach plexus, found between the outer longitudinal and the inner circular. That is the plexus, and this nerve plexus is supplied by both parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve fibers, which come from the autonomic nervous system. When we come to nerve supply, we shall see their big role, whereby they will tell you that the myenteric or the Albert plexus is responsible for movement, GIT movements, or what we call GIT motility. So the myenteric plexus is for GIT motility, whereas the mesenteric, or what we call the submucosa plexus, is for secretions. So it is the one that enhances secretions being supplied by the parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve fibers, either stimulating or inhibiting. So this is basically the histology of the GIT we can discuss today, whereby we have seen from the mouth, pharynx, and the esophagus, plus the anal canal having it supplied by the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and its major role is for protection against the harsh conditions, whereby we have taken hot food. Then we have seen that is part of the mucosa, which we have seen. Then it is here. Then we saw also the mucosa having lamina propria made up of alveolar connective tissue and the lymphatics. And we saw also the Muscularis mucosa, which is like a small portion of the mucosa, having smooth muscles for contraction. We have seen the second layer, which is the submucosa, having alveolar connective tissue, blood vessels supplying the GIT and the nerves. And within the submucosa, we have seen that the plexus found there is called Myenteric or submucosa plexus, which is responsible for GIT secretions. Then we have looked also at the Muscularis, which is number 3, made up of, and we have seen different places how it differs. Esophagus having both skeletal and smooth. Stomach having 3 layers, that is the inner oblique, middle circular, and outer longitudinal, all responsible for the churning action, or what we call mixing waves. And we have also seen the small intestine and large having outer longitudinal and inner circular. And we have seen that between the outer longitudinal and the inner circular, we have a nerve plexus known as Myenteric or Albert plexus, responsible for GIT motility. And the fourth one, there is the fourth one which I've talked about, we have not talked about, which is Serosa or adventitia. And this adventitia is only found in the esophagus. The esophagus does not have Serosa, but it has the adventitia, which connects it with the trachea, but is non-fluid, is not fluid filled. Then from the stomach up to the large intestine, here we see it is being supplied by the Serosa. And this Serosa, you can call it visceroperitoneum, made up of simple squamous, or what we call mesothelium. They're made up of simple squamous, and it is the visceral layer which forms together with the outer layer, which we know which forms what we call the serous fluid. And this serous fluid within the Serosa is the one that prevents the friction. So it is like an interstitium protecting the GIT within the abdomen. So that is the Serosa we are talking about, made up of simple squamous, or what we know as mesothelium layers, and it is fluid filled, and its role is to prevent friction in the case of any injury. It protects our GIT there. So we have seen the adventitia is only restricted to esophagus, whereas the Serosa, the remaining part have the Serosa, which is visceroperitoneum, made up of what? Simple columna, or what we normally call mesothelium. Thank you so much for listening. From where we started until this time, always remember to subscribe, like the video, and share your comments so that we can continue to grow. Thank you so much.